Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Gray Maybe today. If you are an avid listener, know that I appreciate you. If you are tuning in for the first time, I'm so glad you stopped by. Consider listening to other episodes and looking up, other previous seasons of Gray Maybe. Today, I have someone on the pod who I like very much, and I'm going to go ahead and say that this person everybody likes. Everybody always says, "Oh, not everyone's going to like you." But for this for this particular person, that is actually not true. Everybody does like her, and I know it because I would have heard something by now or been able to tell if somebody didn't like her. And if you know this person, you know what I'm saying is true. Today my guest, her name is Julie Schmid. I'm Jillian Schmitz. She's Julie Schmid.
Yeah.
Don't get it twisted. And I know her because we did the China job together, choreographed by Keith and Sharon Young, Sharon Young, and assisted by Dominique Kelly. And we spent a good time and chunk of time in China together. I had a very interesting experience. I've talked about that before a bit here and there. I had Chelsea on the pod in season 2 that Julie Schmidt. And Julie and I are both from Minnesota.
Hell
We
yeah.
both have family caramel recipes. Hers is a bit more famous than mine. Mine we just keep in the family. Hers, I think they've actually made some monetary value out of. And so we just have a lot of weird little cute things in common. But Julie Schmid is a dancer. She's an act. I've seen her do acting work. I've worked with her. I'm a fan of Julie Schmid. And so she's on the pod today. And so Julie, will you just like give a little intro if I missed anything? Don't go against what I said. I know everybody
I
likes
want
you.
to.
Yeah, you're not gonna though because
Oh.
what I said is true. So Julie, if there's anything you want to add to the intro.
Oh my. That was just, I am very humbled by that intro. Thank you. But I am such a fan of yours, so the feeling is mutual.
Oh, thank you. I
Yeah.
don't. I do know that I am not everyone's cup of tea. So I'm very clear
Well,
with where I'm
okay.
at.
That's
But
fair.
Julie Schmidt, I don't know anybody who doesn't like Julie Schmidt. In fact, if you ask someone, "Do you know Julie Schmidt?" Everyone's like, "Oh my god, I love Julie Schmidt." Okay,
I'm
so
blushing.
Julie's good, and if we can get our cams to work because we had a little bit of problem, we'll get our cams to work, and you see this on the YouTube or the socials, you'll see her blush a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
So
Sweating.
yes, this season is like the worst season. It's like I like, oh, great idea. Let's do a season on the saddest thing. Like let's do that'll be some great, like I I don't do apparently uplifting topics for seasons. I do the nitty gritty, which is weird because it's things people don't want to talk about and probably don't want to listen to, which is a weird thing to do for a podcast host is choose things that nobody wants to listen to or talk about. I'm hoping that somehow that still works out for me, but this season is on grief, and there's so many different components to grief. There's so many different types of grief.
Hmm.
And I feel like as a society, and I've probably have said this many times over in all of the episodes of the season, I don't think we as a community know how to grieve, help each
Hmm.
other grieve, uh, like make it a normal part of life thing. Like it is like this thing to avoid at all costs when it's kind of inevitable on some level or all levels.
Hmm.
So with that being said, you know, Julie has a story that I think quite a few people who know you, who are around you, do know about. And I would love if you want to share a little bit about your experience through grief. I know you had two losses kind of close ish together.
Yeah.
So that was like also because I was watching it from afar and I was just like, oh my God, I can't handle it. And I'm not you. And so and I'm like, no more. No, no, this is not
Let's press
cool. And so,
pause.
yes, a big long pause. And so, anything you want to talk about. And I'm going to really yield to you as much as I'm jabbering now. I'll yield to you about anything you want to talk about. I have my little questions, I have my little things, but like we don't have to hit all the bullet points. And like if you don't want to go into the deep of like anything deep, don't do it. Talk about, like, I think all of it is valuable. I think
Totally.
all about anything you want to say about it. But if you want to start with like your experience, feel free. If there's something else that you want to jump around to, you got the questions ahead of time. You got a cheat sheet so you can highlight whatever you want.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I actually disagree with you that people don't want to talk about or listen to topics about grief because I have found it very valuable and I've
Oh,
sought
good.
that out. And
Oh,
I think
amazing.
anybody who has gone through like a major loss, it can feel isolating sometimes. So then when you hear other people talk about it, there's so many, things that it's like, oh my God, I felt that way too,
Mm-hmm.
or oh, that's interesting, like that you looked at it from that perspective or whatever. So I think it's great that you're doing
Oh,
this.
good. Thank you. And for nothing else, because everybody likes you, they're going to listen to this episode. This episode will get
We'll see.
hits. Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
setting the bar very high, and
No, 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 no,
you know,
no, no, no. You got more than enough people that listen. Yeah, I know. It'll be good. So
no,
tell
that was
me,
one of the.
tell. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that Jason, so my late husband, which we will be talking about, that
Mm-hmm.
was like always one of his things because I can be like, oh my God, it's so good or this or that, and he'd be like, you need to like lower the bar a little bit because you're making the expectation far too high. So I think there's a little bit of him and me being like, ooh.
I love that. I love that Jason said that because I had to change how I saw. I have also overinflated expectations. And so I had to start setting what I would say bars so low I could step over them. Like I had to be able to, like, in my mind, see a bar so low that I could step over because yeah, I'll spin it all the way up into something that is just absolutely not even possible. So we have that in common as well. So
Totally.
tell me about Jason. I met Jason. I
You
got to meet
did.
Jason.
You
Yeah.
did. Yeah, Jason came to China
Yeah.
for a week. It was actually over his 30th birthday. And I mean, honestly, I don't even know how he made it there. Like, he flew by himself, like, with not being able to walk super well, like, no cell phone communication. Like, thank God he survived. But yeah, I mean, Jason's one of my favorite people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was my husband. We met in college, fell in love. I moved out to LA to dance. He started law school in Wisconsin. We did a long distance relationship. And then finally, he moved out to LA, and it was supposed to be now everything is great and we start our life together. And he was very quickly diagnosed with brain cancer. Which was misdiagnosed for like 6 months as vertigo. He was having like headaches and dizziness, and
Mm.
it was classic vertigo symptoms, but at a certain point, it's like something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I do have to give him a shout out though. He passed the California bar exam with a brain tumor, and
I
anybody who knows
mean,
anything about bar exams, they're really hard. California is one of the
yes.
hardest, and a lot of people
Yes.
have to take it multiple times. So I do have to like toot
Holy
his horn on that.
moly.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so he was 27 years old, I was 25. We weren't married at the time. Like, we were just thrown into this. I mean, literally, he got an MRI. He was in the ER that night. He was in surgery the next day with a
Holy
brain
cow.
tumor the size of a lemon. And that was the beginning of our journey of nearly 10 years of, you know, chemo, radiation, surgeries, doctor's visits, ups and downs. There's not technically like a remission on brain cancer, but there's like,
Mm.
cancer free or no visible
Right.
disease,
Right.
status.
Right.
So yeah, it was just a roller coaster until finally it all came to a head. Actually, the beginning of the pandemic was when um, you know, things got really bad and we were running out of options. And he did one final surgery, and then you start to know that like time is running out.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning, like it's like, okay, so you have a brain tumor and you're going to do all the things, and if this thing doesn't work, well, we can try this other thing, and
Right.
and then your doctor starts to be like, okay, well, we have one more thing in the bag, and then it starts
Mm-hmm.
to be like, how's your quality of life? And that's when you
Right.
kind of know, like, okay,
Yeah.
we might have to start facing like the reality of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this being terminal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, he passed away on May 25th of 2020. Um, and thank God I was able to be there because it was COVID, and so
Right.
he was in the hospital for, almost a month without me by his side. And
Mm.
it, they would let me come in, the nurses would like
Mm-hmm.
sneak me in or whatever. But,
Mm-hmm.
throughout his whole diagnosis and our whole journey together, it was like we always were there as a team. Like I
Mm-hmm.
slept in the hospital with him, like we were there, and it felt like if we were together, we could conquer
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Right.
And I think that was like one of the hardest parts was like for both of us, like being separated and not physically being there. And yeah, anyways, yeah, he
That no, continue.
yeah, no, I start this is what happens when I start talking. I start talking and then I forget what the point of everything was because I
No,
just
this is
go
it's not
down these
that it
rabbit holes.
no, I was only going to interject and say that, just to refresh everyone's memory because I think we're all a little kooky after
Mhm.
whatever your pandemic experience was. Everybody had a different pandemic experience. Nobody's was good. Some people's was way worse, but
Sure.
nobody had a great pandemic experience. Now, we all make jokes like, oh man, I'd love to have that 2 weeks off again. Yeah, get that government money out, the good
Totally.
old days,
Right.
right? Right. But that's us looking now back, and also nobody was having a good time. It was
Totally.
just how bad of a time were you having?
Sure.
And that point in there, like, I can't, like, the torture of just that timing of that
Yeah.
on top of everything, i I just, it seems so intolerable, like, because this wasn't like March everyone was kind of like, oh, did you hear, oh yeah, it's kind of weird, oh yeah, see you
Hmm.
in 2 weeks.
Totally.
April was like, this seemed like maybe we should
Yeah.
take this seriously, this seems
Yeah.
a little rough, I'm gonna start wearing a hazmat suit. And then May was like, oh fuck,
Hmm.
oh, we're fucked. Like everyone's
Yeah.
fucked. Everything is fucked. So, like, what a rough, like, what a rough timing aspect of all of that too.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, when he went in for his last surgery, and we were on the fence of like, are we still doing surgery? Because this was his sixth craniotomy,
Uh,
and at this point, like in the past, like so just so people kind of understand, like he had two surgeries back to back at the end of 2010,
mm-hmm,
and that um, cleared out a lot of the tumor, and he was cancer free. He also did radiation and chemo. He had some disabilities because of it, like his speech was slower. The tumor was on his
right.
cerebellum. So thank God, like it didn't affect his personality. Like Jason was
Mm-hmm.
always Jason up until
Yeah.
like his last moment on this earth.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that. But he was more like wobbly. Like he walked slower, he talked
Mm-hmm.
slower, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. He was cancer free for 5 years. Then it came back, but still in the cerebellum. Um, did surgery again, a little more radiation, more chemo, and then it was like 2018 it came back, and then it came back again. So it's like the time starts getting shorter in between
I
recurrences.
see.
And so this last recurrence, not only did it come back in the cerebellum, but now it had spread a little bit to like his frontal lobe
Mm.
and another little area of his cerebellum. And so we opted to do one last surgery just to sort of buy as much time as we could. At this point, we knew like we like it's spreading. It's
Mm-hmm.
the time, the clock is ticking.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's just like buying time and like how much time can we have with each other and for him to have on this earth. And so opted to do the surgery. Got out of the hospital like super quick. It was like in and out brain surgery.
Mm.
Because again, April 2020, nobody wants to be in the
Right.
hospital.
Right.
Um, and I guess both of us were just like, okay, well, we got out of the hospital. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever's going to happen, like, we're together, we're at home. And then he went to the hospital because he got pneumonia. And like, we thought it was just gonna be like an in and out thing. And that's when it just progressively got worse.
Mm.
Um, But I was able to be there when he passed. His family was able to come in. My family was able to come in and have like some final moments. And his actual passing was very beautiful.
Mm.
He had been taken off life support, and the doctors were like, it's probably gonna happen really soon. And then he just like kept breathing on his own. And it was
Hmm.
such like, Jason, so he's sort of like he's stubborn and he doesn't like to do things on other people's terms. And so it was very much like a, oh, really kind of a
Yeah,
moment.
he had a very dry sense of humor and like
Yeah.
very witty but very dry and like very cunning. He could concisively I remember him summing up a moment in like a sentence in a way that you're just like,
Yes.
did you just hear what he said? That's really fucking funny. Like, and
Yeah.
it's just slide it in there in a way that's
Totally.
like, what did you just say?
Yeah,
Like,
like
that is funny.
out of nowhere. So it just
Yes.
really, it felt like he at least got to go out on his terms.
Yeah.
And I was there when it happened. I had gotten up from the bed and he knew that I was okay. Like he knew his parents were on the way. I had been laughing about something and told him about it, and like
Hmm.
it very much felt like he was like, okay, I'm gonna
Hmm.
just sneak out, you know.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
but it's such a weird thing in general, death,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
someone is there and then they're not,
Yes.
and with him, I saw it happen. But then a year later, I lost my mom very unexpectedly. She fell down the stairs. It was like a freak accident. I got a
Oh my
call at
God.
3 a.m., with my sister hysterically crying and just being like, Mom's dead, and and
And you're
that's like
like, what?
burned into my head. And it's just like, no, no, no. Like,
Yeah.
and so it was like, with that situation, it's like somebody just disappeared out of thin air. And
Hmm.
like, with Jason, it's like I saw it happen. I could like wrap my head around it. You know, I feel like we were grieving the loss of so many other things throughout our whole experience with it,
Hmm.
that not that it makes it easier to grieve, but it's
Hmm.
different,
Yeah.
whereas when somebody just like disappears.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
yeah.
there's like this anticipatory grief
Hmm.
of like when someone's sick or something is kind of long term,
Yeah.
um or if you're just highly anxious like myself and you anticipate grief every single thing all
Sure.
the time of like, oh, a pet, yeah, I'll do that. Oh, I can anticipatory grief. I can anticipate grief for everything, at any time, all
Yeah.
times of the day. Like, just really, really, probably unhealthy. So that there's like that anticipatory grief, which, my dad passed in April, and
Hmm.
he had been diagnosed, and I'll probably tell this story many times over on all the episodes of the season, but he was diagnosed in 2019 with supranuclear palsy, progressive
Okay.
supranuclear palsy, PSP. It's a brain thing.
Hmm.
It's kind of like a similar issue that Alzheimer's patients have, where this buildup of tau protein in the brain is not able to be expelled out of the body normally.
Hmm.
And so but instead of it being like, oh, they don't know who you are or where they are aware, their body starts breaking down.
Hmm.
And so it affects their ocular nerves. That's why they fall. It affects their gait. It affects
Hmm.
their swallowing, their capacity to
Hmm.
swallow, which is what eventually a lot of them end up passing from, is
Yeah.
the inability to swallow, right? Or
Yeah.
um, uh, what's it called? When you basically choke. You
I
basically,
should know this because that was one of Jason's issues as
yeah.
well. And like part of how he
I
got pneumonia was like he couldn't, like
Yes,
he was
expel the
swallowing
cough, or yeah,
incorrectly. Like he was like
aspirated.
swallowing.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Oh
Jeez.
my God, we both, and anyone who's listening is like, aspiration.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I've said it a million times. In this moment, I can't remember.
Yes.
That's what grief does to you, by the way. It just
Hmm.
knocks out parts of your memory.
Totally.
Just gone. So he had, he once he had that diagnosis, and my dad was like not the healthiest of guy,
Sure.
growing up. So I kind of always grew up having kind of anticipatory grief for him
Interesting.
that he was going to pass earlier than other people's dads
Hmm.
or earlier than he could have passed. And he didn't. He actually got he was like 75, 70, 74, 75, which is like way older than I ever thought he would get. Like my dad
Really?
had his first stroke when I was in my early 20s.
Oh, okay.
And he had a big stroke in my early 20s and didn't need surgery, or kind of like made a quote unquote full recovery. But he has probably since had several strokes that people didn't know about since, which is
Hmm.
also like they think PSP is very largely not researched, but yet because it's just pretty rare and they don't know enough about it. But there is a bit of research that suggests that people have had several strokes may go on to have something like this. So, nonetheless, my dad passed in April and I had this anticipatory grief. I watched him get
Hmm.
more and more frail. I watched his system shut down. I was, you know, I got to slow walk that
Yeah.
process, which I think a lot of people who have had a loved one suffer from cancer, suffer
Hmm.
from, a debilitating illness or a terminal illness, they've watched that thing happen. Um, and it's also just naturally happens as people around us get older. We do see like
Sure.
that deterioration. But then there is also that shock grief that you're talking about with your mom that is just like, no, you
It
get blindsided,
totally.
blindsided.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
just like
don't know which
slaps you
one
in the
is worse.
face.
I don't know which one is
It's
worse.
honestly, it's apples to oranges. Like, like it's not a
But I
grief
like oranges
competition.
better.
Well, it depends on the season, right?
Okay, okay.
Although they're
Like
kind of
I
similar
don't.
seasons.
Yeah, they're both like just terrible, like
Yeah,
for different reasons.
totally. With Jason, it's we had to grieve so many different like micro losses along the way. Like you grieve sort of, him, just the loss of like his physicality that he used to have, and then we always wanted to have kids and stuff, and we got to a place where like, well, that's off the table for us,
Hmm.
and so you kind of like you grieve that, but you reimagine your future in a different way,
Hmm.
and so it's just like, and then losing him, as a younger person, like in my early 30s when he passed away, it's like you lose like a future that you
Hmm.
thought you might have.
Hmm.
Um, but you kind of like little steps of that happen along the way, but none of that makes it easier. It's like, did you watch Succession?
Okay, hold up.
I
So
mean,
here's the
also I don't want
deal.
to spoil anything for anybody, but
Don't spoil anything for anyone. I am late to the succession
okay,
train. I refused to watch it because I watched one episode and I was like, I feel like I'm just watching Rupert Murdoch's family or Donald Trump's family. And I couldn't get into it because I was like, I can't watch these assholes fight over money like this. Like, I just can't. But then
totally.
everybody talked about it so much. I started getting so much FOMO. And because of the writer's strike, there's not a lot of new content coming out. I was like,
Sure.
okay, I'm going to watch it. I started. So I'm only like season 2, maybe
Okay,
beginning
cool.
of season 3.
Well, I'm not going to say who says it or what happened or whatever, but it's in
Okay.
response to grief. And one of the characters
Okay.
is like, oh, I'm fine. I pre grieved, and it's this
Yes.
whole thing of like, but that's impossible. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
as much as you think you can be fine because you were
Yes.
anticipating some kind
Yes.
of outcome, you know, you can't, because then it happens and at some point it hits you.
Mhm.
And I feel like it still hits me. It's
Mhm.
like it's been 3 years since Jason, and it's been a year and a half since my mom, and when it hits me it still hurts, and
Mhm.
it'll sometimes just like come out of nowhere. Like
Mhm.
I'll be totally
Yeah.
fine, and then I'll, hear a song on the radio, or I'll see a couple holding hands, and it's just like,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
then you're just, ugh.
Down for the count.
Yeah.
You're on a
But
Union 5 at best, and maybe
totally.
yeah, it's I've noticed that and I've heard that so much from people who I have watched, you know, really go through their grief, you know, like what's the word I want to say? Like, not vulnerably, because it's all vulnerable, but like
Yeah.
that have showed me their grief so just nakedly, like they've been like really upfront about their grief.
Mhm.
Like I've heard that a lot, that it's like it comes out of nowhere. It comes out, like it's, you'll think you're
Mhm.
good, and then, this, that. I love the idea of
Yeah.
pre-grieving, because that is what anxiety is 100%.
Totally.
It's like a constant like or maybe even depression. Like, I
Yeah.
I am running over the question in my mind recently of like, wait, have I been clinically depressed my whole life, or have I suffered from whatever like it feels the same to me,
Yeah.
like in a way that I don't know if we're even as a society ready to tackle yet. And I don't necessarily have these big markers of things to grieve, but depression feels like grief. So even if I'm
Mhm.
not going through grief, but that's what depression feels like. So people who are grieving are feeling depression. Like even if they might not be clinically depressed, but like
Totally.
there's some like parallel there that I think is,
Oh
for
yeah.
nothing else, just like open it up and like consider that there's some like segue leeway, like I don't know, something there to be thought about or
Oh yeah.
considered.
I mean,
um
I am just like naturally an optimistic and like happy person by like that's just like my DNA. You know what I mean? And
mhm
so like I feel really lucky about that because it helped me go through some really hard
mhm
times. I also find humor to be very helpful.
mhm mhm
Sometimes it gets dark and
mhm
people aren't ready for you to like drop a dead mom joke, but
mhm
listen, when you have a dead mom, you get to tell dead mom jokes. Like,
that's what
sorry,
I'm
you
saying.
know? But I hit a really low point in my journey of grief with Jason, and I'm trying to think timeline wise. I feel like it was after it had already been a year. It was after
Mhm.
like the year marker. We weren't able to do like a big memorial for
Yep.
him until far
Yep.
later because of COVID. We did a really
Mhm.
small family thing. And even then I was like, oh, once COVID's over, we're going to do like the Jason tour. We're going to do a memorial
Mhm.
here. And we're going to do, because he has his hometown, I have my hometown, LA is
Mhm.
our home. I was like, we're going to do, are you fucking kidding me? No, I was
Mhm.
delusional. Like, it's so exhausting to plan a
Mhm.
memorial. But it
Yeah.
is important to be able to do some kind of thing to like honor someone and be like,
Mhm.
this happened. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, this
Yeah.
person is not here, but let's celebrate the time that they were and let's like mark it and let's all be together so we can laugh and cry and do all the things.
Yeah.
But we weren't able to do like a big memorial until like a year and a half later. So it was after the year mark of Jason passing, maybe like 2 or 3 months after that. And thank God, I started seeing a therapist before he passed because I knew that
Oh, good.
things were not looking good. And to be honest, I should have been seeing a therapist throughout the whole thing. Like that would have been very helpful. We went to a
Mhm.
brain tumor support group that was like amazing. And,
Oh,
um,
good.
but I started seeing an individual therapist. And so she, had been with me through the whole journey and saw my ebbs and flows. And I'm really grateful for that because I did hit a point where she recommended I see a psychiatrist because I was getting to like clinically
Mhm.
depressed
Mhm.
levels of unhappiness.
Yeah.
Um, and that's somebody who I can find the bright side of a lot of different situations, like I'm an optimist and
Mhm.
but it's still like grief will just do that to you and it can be debilitating and I talk about this because I don't want anyone to ever feel like ashamed of that. Like,
Mhm.
it was great that I had the tools to, you know, for somebody to tell me, like, I think you might actually be depressed right now, and maybe you should talk to a
Mhm.
psychiatrist because maybe you need to go on something for a little bit to help you out of this like low.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, grief definitely, for me at least, like can manifest as depression.
Mhm. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think that's important to kind of, especially how you frame it as being an optimist. Like, look, if anybody's going to get out of this, like,
Hmm.
with a smile
I
on my
got
face,
it.
it's me, and I had to like get some help, like, I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's saying quite a lot because I am not an optimist. I am whatever the opposite of that is, if
A
you want to say the
pessimist.
C word, and there's a couple C words you could use. A pessimist, a cynicist, like all the things. I like to say I'm a realist, but I'm probably
Hey.
more on the other side.
Well, hey, that's you being an optimist about being a cynicist, right?
Okay, maybe I'll
Yeah,
take
right.
it.
I don't
I'll
know.
take it. Um, I I like that you talked about a second ago. This is a little bit back, but you talked about with Jason, you guys kind of had to, before he even passed, like as you're going through these scenarios, you have like these micro griefs, right? These
Hmm.
little things. And I love that you said that because I think there's so many things in life that people, as we age and as things
Hmm.
happen, these little micro griefs happen. And I don't think people maybe necessarily recognize that that's what that is.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes really hard if you don't allow that space and time and acknowledge and, just care towards that process. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are just like bulldozing ahead however they can, best way
Hmm.
they can, but without really I digesting like, hey, this happened to me. I lost my job. I lost my career.
Hmm.
Lost a friendship or I lost a pet. And pet, I would not say as a micro grief because I know people,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
pets are a big deal. I know they are for me. Um, I know they are for a lot of other people where it can, some people have even reported like they were more upset over a pet than maybe a certain family
Sure.
member or whatever. It depends on the
Sure.
family member, you never know. But, so the micro grief thing is real. And I think if anyone's listening and they're listening, as a person who, oh, well, I don't really have a big grief in my life. I'm just listening because I listen to Great Maybe or I know Julie or I know Jillian. Like, I implore you to start investigating where the micro griefs are
Hmm.
and if you're tending to them or not. And I'm not saying
Totally.
you have to tend to them, but like maybe think about it,
Notice.
acknowledge it, like even just notice it. Yeah. And then if you think you might need to take another step in some direction, I'm like a huge proponent for recovery. This whole podcast is based on recovery. Even the first season, which was about abortion, it wasn't really, I mean, it's about abortion for
Hmm.
sure, but it was also kind of about the recovery of that whole process of me telling my story, getting it out there, and then seeing if anybody else wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And it had a political spin to it for sure because of the time we're in. But to me, that was a recovery season. And then obviously the second season about eating disorder, same thing,
Hmm.
recovery. But grief, same thing, recovery. Like,
Hmm.
not that you ever recover fully from grief. I don't know if that's possible, but like, what if you can't go around it? If you can only go through it,
Hmm.
how do you go through it? Like, and how do you at least get through it or go through it?
Totally.
Um, so I'm hoping that kind of like helps some people if they're looking and want to dig deeper in some of that stuff.
Yeah. In one of our therapists in our brain tumor support group would bring up a lot the concept of ambiguous loss. And I think that's kind of like the same thing. It's like, it's these losses that, like, somebody dies, that's a very clear loss, but like a loss of a future or something
Mm-hmm.
like that, like those are things that are like harder to sort of like wrap your head around, but are very important. I think a lot of women go through it with like a miscarriage, it's like,
Yep.
it's this loss of something, and maybe it was like the very beginning stages of something, but like it is so much bigger than just that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to like clock those things so that if you are feeling feelings surrounding it, like you can give yourself permission and you can
Mm-hmm.
feel those things and not judge them.
Yeah. Like, I'm never going to be a gymnast, Julie, like ever.
You should grieve that.
I kind of want to. I'm kind of being serious, and I'm obviously making a probably ill positioned joke. But
No,
as
it's
you do get older, I'm not saying
mm-hmm.
you can't do anything at any age. Don't come for me. Like, yes, anybody, you can all do whatever you want. But as you get older, you do
But also you
start to be
can't.
like, huh?
Hmm. I said, but also you can't.
Also, you can't. Like, there are certain things that, like, you and I are
Yeah,
never going to be on the Olympic team. Like,
totally.
That
Like
might have
I'm
been
a
a dream of ours
dancer
or not.
and my leg used to go all the way up to here and it doesn't go as high anymore. And
Yes,
like that hurts sometimes.
it hurts. It hurts physically, emotionally,
Yes.
spiritually, and mentally. And I can break that all down. Like, hurts my ego. It hurts
Totally.
my, I'm mad at God over it. Like, I can go through all of it. But
Yeah.
it is. And this is the thing, like, as you get older, just there might be
Hmm.
some grief waiting for you over things that you didn't necessarily anticipate.
Totally.
Um, and I think it's valid and important to like acknowledge and work through it.
Yeah, I think so too.
You mentioned, grief comes kind of like little surprises and things like that.
Hmm.
Is there anything else about grief that surprised you that you're like, oh, I didn't? It could be, it could be a good
Huh.
thing. It could be a bad thing. It could be
Yeah.
lighthearted. It could be dark. You know.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think for me, like experiencing loss, like also highlighted like the things that I have. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like I feel really lucky that I lost Jason, but I still have his families, you know, like
Hmm.
so many of family and friends like really like was there for me, you know, and was there
Hmm.
for us throughout the whole thing. And so I think it it highlighted like the community that I have, you know, and
Hmm.
that was like a very positive part
Hmm.
about it. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just a sneaky little fucker. Like it'll just like come out of nowhere.
Hmm.
But sometimes it's good. Like sometimes it hits me and I get really sad or I cry or whatever. But there's almost a part of me that's like, okay, good, I'm still sad about this. You know, it's
Hmm.
you know,
Okay.
like like
Yeah.
I think you worry or I have worried like, you know, that I'll just like move on from things and like life will keep going and Jason will be forgotten or my mom will be forgotten or whatever. And I think
Mm.
sometimes it just reminds you like no, like there it's all still there and
Hmm.
it all still matters.
Awesome. I love that. Like, I love to hear that because I think there is this fear when someone's not here in front of you
Mhm.
that like, oh my God, I'm gonna like, how do I remember? Am I
Mhm.
losing the memory of like, can I still remember their laugh? Can I still remember like
Mhm.
some of those things? You're like,
Yeah,
oh God, am I losing it? Like what?
totally.
And then sometimes you get hit with a memory that you don't even remember. You're like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
that memory.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of didn't even think about that. That one's been way in the back for who knows how long.
Totally. Very recently, like just my mom's voice popped in my head of her just being like, "Hi, Jules." Like the way
Ah,
in which she would say it, like, you
right.
know, if I called her or something like that. And it was just like
Yeah.
out of nowhere. I don't even remember like what like sparked it or whatever. And it was just like, it gave me all the feels. You know, it's like
Yeah.
for a second you feel like she's there and then you remember that she's not, you know.
Right.
That happens a lot when I get in the car because that's I
Hmm.
would talk to my mom a lot in the car, like I would call her or whatever.
Right.
And so it's like that little urge is still there. Like I
Mm-hmm.
still will get in the car and just be like, I'm gonna, oh no, I can't, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes me really sad, but it also makes me happy that I'm still wanting to do that. You
Yeah.
know, it's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know
That
if
makes
you have
sense.
that like with your dad at all or
My dad and I had a complicated relationship. So some of it, yeah, like I had a memory about him the other day that I was like, oh man, I haven't thought about that in a long time. Like
hmm
that was one of the good memories that I didn't remember until now. And I thought I
hmm
kind of had most of them,
yeah.
there. Um, but I don't have a ton of surprise about grief. I was surprised at my ability to deal with the last kind of arranging of my
hmm
dad. Um, and I don't know, I'm going to throw that as a pro to anticipatory grief. Like I'm gonna, even though we said it doesn't help, I do want to go ahead and say that I do think that that part might have helped me
hmm
for that scenario.
Totally.
Of course, it doesn't make you flawless in the process. It doesn't make it, you know, feeling free or, like
Hmm.
amazing. But there were a lot of things that I felt like I was able to assist with that I didn't think I would really be able to.
Yeah.
So I was surprised by that. I was surprised that I wasn't necessarily lashing out on people as much as I thought I would have been. That's my surprise, everybody. I thought I was going to be more of a raging bitch than I actually was, but I still
Well, look
was.
at
Like, let me
you.
tell you, there were certain people that still got it.
Well,
Um,
hey, if you lost all your bitchiness, you wouldn't be you.
that's see. This is what I'm saying. This is what I see. This is why everybody likes you, Julie. This is why everybody likes you. Okay, now you mentioned that this brain tumor support group having, a psychologist, having a
Hmm.
psychiatrist as
Yeah.
well, and I'm gonna get that. If that brain tumor support group is open to the public, I'd love to link up to it in
Oh,
the
yeah,
show notes after the show. I'll
absolutely.
make sure I get that from you, and or if you remember the name of it, you want to throw
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah, it's called Cancer Support Community, and they have other cancer specific ones. So the brain tumor one was very unique in that because it affects like your brain, obviously. The
Right.
thing that helps you like think and do things. Caregivers and patients came to the group together, and then
Mm-hmm.
we'd do like an hour together, and then we'd go into breakout groups where patients and caregivers could have their own spaces. And that,
Amazing.
I mean, I have a close friend that I met in the group. We actually met his wife. He came one time, but his wife was a regular in the group, and the four of us became close, and that was amazing. In that, you know, they were able to help me through my loss with Jason, and then when she ended up passing away, like I was able to be there for
Mm,
him, and just to have that kind of support for each other was, has
right.
been amazing.
Good. I'm going to put that in the show notes. And I just want to put a pitch out there to anybody. If you're a caretaker on any level, please, if you haven't already, find some kind of a support group
Hmm.
or some kind of support for yourself. It is so, so important for people who are caretaking, people who are ill in their
Hmm.
life to have that as a resource. And also, I want to pitch anytime you're going through something, find your people. Like you
Hmm.
have got to find
Yes.
your people that are going through the same thing because otherwise you go through it in a vacuum. And I'm not even like I'm the biggest proponent of have a therapist. Yes, great, yes. But also you need to have your people. And it's not
Yeah.
your people like your friends and your family. Yes, those people too. But your people who are going through the same situation that you are because a certain there's a certain need that gets fulfilled from people
Hmm.
who have gone through it or are going through it that other people who are your support system in life may not be able to kind of give you that same support. So I want to throw out that pitch to anybody who's might be listening and is a caretaker or, is going through something. Anything, find your support, find those groups, find those things. Um, so I'm gonna ask you two, like it's a multi question. Like I want to
Okay.
know if there's something you can think of. Like you did talk about uh the the support group and the
Hmm.
psychologist and the psychiatrist. Like the other side of that question is what didn't help? Like what didn't help? Like because
um,
this question is born out of people saying the wrong thing, which I often am. I am often the
um,
person who says the wrong fucking thing.
well, it's funny. Like, first, so many things are coming into my head right now. There's no right thing to say. I'll preface with that. Like,
I feel
everybody's
left
like,
off the hook.
I
Okay,
just
good.
want to be like, everyone's like, I don't know what to say. I just want to say the right thing or whatever. There's no right thing.
Hmm.
There are some wrong things, but I feel like it's very, like it's very personal to people. Like when you mentioned pets, right? Like it did not help me when someone was like, "Well, I lost my dog," and blah, and I just wanted
Right.
to be like, "Were you married to your fucking dog? Like,
Yes,
did you, was
exactly.
your dog your life partner? Like,
Yes.
no." However, I know that losing a pet is a huge loss, and I'm not downplaying any of
Right.
that.
Right.
Also, losing your spouse is not the same as losing your grandparent. Like,
Right.
again, like, and I don't mean this in a way like don't try to use your losses to connect with somebody because that's not what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Um, just be delicate with the way in which maybe compare losses,
Right.
because
Right.
it's not a comparison game in like my loss is bigger than your loss or whatever,
Right.
but just be very delicate in the ways in which, I don't know, for me at least, that was something that like I could see that somebody was trying to connect with me,
Yeah.
but also it was like,
Yeah.
like where
It's
you're
not
just like,
helpful. Not
okay,
helpful.
cool, thank you.
And I think,
Um,
unfortunately, people, they want to relate so bad, right? They
yes,
want to let
yes,
people know that, like, I get it. I get sadness. Like, I feel bad too.
totally.
And this is why. But instead of just being like, dude, that sucks. Like, that is shitty.
Yeah.
And then
And
just,
and I mean, sure, if you've experienced losses, like of course bring those up. But you could also then like put a little disclaimer on the end and say, I know this isn't the same as what you're going through,
right. Right.
instead of the person having to put their own disclaimer on it for you.
Right. Right.
But also, also somebody that has experienced a major loss, it doesn't mean that your losses, like other person who hasn't experienced that, don't matter. Because I
Hmm.
also, on the flip side of it, had people being like, oh, well, I didn't want to bring that up because you just lost
Right.
Jason. And so this,
Right.
whatever. And it's like, no, but we all still have big losses
Right.
happening in our lives. And if anything, sometimes, talking about somebody else's helps you just like escape your own, and
Listen, misery loves company, and the last person I want to talk to when I'm miserable is someone who's doing really well. I gotta say, so like, if you're having a hard time, don't keep that from someone else who's having a hard time.
yeah,
Like,
be there for each other,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah.
No, I totally get it, and I would agree with you 100%. All of those things. I am gonna attach. I found a little do's and don'ts of like things to say or not
Oh,
say.
cool.
When someone's
Hmm.
grieving, and uh, I think that's like a specific thing, like you brought up of how, and then there's some other ones too in there that I think are subtle and good to remind people that like don't play the at least game. Well, at least, like don't like just let no, like that's on the don'ts. So at the end of this podcast, I'm going to read it and then I'm going to put it on every episode as a link. It'll be there as a
Totally.
link on every episode for you to look if you know you're going to be seeing someone, talking to someone, or you have someone close to you dealing with grief and you don't know how to talk to them, or you at least figure out what not to say. And then you can,
Yeah.
there's some dudes
Yeah.
on there too. But, um, oh, I have a quick question. This is like
Oh
not
yeah.
on the question sheet. This is
Oh,
not on the question
give it
sheet.
to me.
I just want to see if you. I'm gonna ask everybody this. I have a theory that your people pleasing is directly not you, but just like in general,
Oh,
someone's
I
people
am.
pleasing. I'm a recovering people pleaser. Uh, Someone's people pleasing, I think, is directly correlated to how honest they will be when someone asks you, "How you doing?" Because, and I'll tell you what this is. So when people say to me, like, my dad died, and they're like, "So how you doing?"
Uh-huh.
I'd be like, I'd look at them and I could tell how badly they wanted me to be okay.
Uh-huh.
And then I would say, I'm doing good. I'm going to lie to
Uh-huh.
you right now because
Yeah.
I can tell how badly you want me to be okay because you're
Sure.
worried. And I get it. But I can't tell you honestly right now because I don't know if you can handle it or like you don't seem like.
Yeah.
And I know this is no one's fault. I'm just talking about noticing my own people pleasing that in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
instead of being honest, I'm like, they want me to be okay. I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
doing good.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if you relate to that. And on the
Totally.
level of people pleasing, 10 being lying to someone who's asking you about your grief, and one being like, no, I'll break down right here, right now, and tell you exactly how I feel. Where do you think you are on that, love?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it depends on the day and who I'm talking to.
And yes,
And
always.
I am a people pleaser. Like it brings me joy to make other people happy. So like it's deeply ingrained. But it is something that I'm working on just even in my daily life. Like you go to the grocery store and you run into someone and they're like, oh, how you doing? Like in past Julie would just always like no matter what, the answer is I'm good, whatever. And now I've at least started to be like, I'm okay, or like, give levels when I know that I'm not like great,
Yeah.
Um, but I think there is always that calculation when you're experiencing grief, or even if you're not, like you read the person and you're like, what do you, like how much do we want to go there right now? And like,
Right.
what can you handle? And what do I want to get into? Because sometimes I say I'm good to like make the other person feel better, but sometimes it's because I don't want to talk about it. So if I just
Yes.
tell you that I'm good, then we
Yes.
can like cut to the next thing and,
Yes.
you know, but I feel like as somebody that has experienced loss and then, when when Jason was alive, um, that you know what I mean when I say that. I'm
Yes.
like, I make
Yes.
jokes and whatever. But we would go to a party and you're meeting people for the first time, and then he would always be like, I would always like really hope people wouldn't ask like, "Oh, so what do you do for a living?" Because I felt like then it would just like all of a sudden now you inevitably get into the brain cancer diagnosis or like I don't know, him and I both it's like somebody asks you about your husband or your partner or whatever, and it's like, what, how much can you handle right now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because I can handle being like, oh, well, my husband has brain cancer and blah, 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 but it's okay. Like, we're still doing this and that or whatever. But then you're dropping a bomb on somebody. And I
Right.
do that. Like, then after he passed, it's like, oh, now I have the widow bomb. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? When somebody's like, oh, so you married? And you're like,
Yeah.
widowed. It's like
Yeah.
they did not expect that out of this package,
Yes,
right? And
no. And
so,
if you're not able to see or know what Julie looks like, she is not what you would imagine a widow. I don't know what a widow looks like. I don't know
no,
what
I
that,
mean,
but I guarantee you it's not her. Okay? Whatever you're
well,
imagining, it's not her.
you just think somebody older, like,
Yes.
or whatever. And so like sometimes in those like how are you doing kind of moments, it's like calculating like what kind of a bomb do I want to drop on this person right now? And
Mm-hmm.
you know, sometimes it's yeah, it is caretaking the other person and being like, what do
Right?
they need? Yeah,
Right? As is
yeah,
what I'm
for
saying.
sure.
I
Like,
was like, oh, that's one of the interesting things I've noticed is that whole thing is who like, how you doing? And I literally will look,
yeah,
and I the same thing as like I don't want to think, I don't want to talk about it, I
yeah.
don't want to get into it. Like I'm good, I'm
Hmm.
great, like there is those moments, and I am trying more and more to be like, and I do think I do this much more now, is when people are like, how you doing? I'm like, or I do this one, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Like, which everybody knows that is. Even in a
Yeah.
text, I'll do it in all caps. I'm fine, which means like everything's like my basic needs, things are fine.
Yeah.
But like I'm
But
not
maybe I'm not
super
okay.
pumped and happy. I'm not
Hmm.
joyous. I'm not, like I'm having a moment, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad to hear that you do that too, because I was like, oh my God, am I this much of a people pleaser? Do I really not want to tell people because I can tell they want me to be okay, and like I'd rather
Totally.
them feel better in this moment. But I can't imagine like going to a party like where the epitome of what's that called? Busy talk. What's that called? Like surface
Small talk?
talk.
Yeah.
Small talk. Yes. Oh my God. It says, hello, I'm
I
from
like
Minnesota.
surface
Why
talk
can't I think of this?
better.
Surface talk. That's what it is to me. It's just like it's just on this like it just
Yeah.
doesn't permeate anything. Like I can't imagine going to like the most surface of small talk and then being like having to be honest, because like what are you gonna say? Like
Yeah.
you gotta lie, you can't avoid it.
Totally.
Eventually people ask enough questions, and then you drop that, and then the
Oh
small
yeah.
talkers, right, the small
Yeah.
talkers are just like, holy shit, now what? And you're just like,
Yeah.
see, this is why I don't want to go
They
to
they
parties
don't
anymore.
they don't know what to do with it.
You're like, because now I feel bad for them, and I have to like cheerlead to like, no, 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 it's so
It's
good, like
okay. Like,
but
yeah.
like you don't have that kind of energy, come on, like
Yeah.
I mean, you
But then
might,
like
but
sometimes like when you don't drop the bomb, then you feel like you're lying.
right.
You know what
Or
I
you're
mean?
withholding.
Yeah, like I have this big
Sneaky.
secret that you don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. It's weird. It's an equation. It's like just calculating all the little things. Like, do I want to talk about this? Do I not? Like, can they handle it? Can they not? Like, where are we? What's the vibe? Like,
Hmm.
yeah,
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot, and that makes me not so feel so
yeah.
weird.
Oh no, but I'm working on my people pleasing skills as well. So
Okay, good,
we could be there
good.
together.
I like your answer. Okay, I'm okay. Like that
Oh.
higher. It's like
Right?
I'm okay, but like I'm not great. Okay, but like I'm
Totally.
okay, but I'm up here in this high
Uh-huh.
register,
I'm
so I'm still
trying.
contemplating. I'm figuring. I'm trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of it says a lot. It says a lot in one word.
Yeah.
Do you have like is there like a belief system or any kind of a spirituality that helps, or maybe you have one post him passing?
Hmm.
And also this can be interchangeable with like, hey, you got any spooky stories you want to talk about? Anything mystical, magical, like
Yeah,
anything that kind of happened that you want to discuss? Because I'm finding that that's kind of a through line in everyone I talk to. There's some kind of spooky, but not in a bad
hmm,
way that
totally.
happens. It can be ongoing or can happen like in that moment.
Yeah.
What you got? What you got?
Yeah, what I got. I don't know. I mean, I don't have any like overarching, belief system. I meditate every morning and that has really helped like ground me. I believe in like a larger God, universe, creator, however you want to express that, like I believe there's something bigger than us all. Um, but I do think that like when people die, like they don't fully leave, you know? I mean, they're just like, if somebody impacted you, like you are you because of them. You know what I mean? There are
Mm-hmm.
little isms in you that are derived from those people. Like I can feel when I say something like my mom, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like,
Right.
in a way, it's like, ooh, she's still there, because
Right.
it's like moving through me you know, um, or when I think of like how Jason would have responded to a question, like at the top of this, where he would have been like, "Can you stop setting the bar so high because now they're gonna go and it's not gonna be as great."
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, there's definitely been some really like fun divine intervention type things. Like I got COVID like in January of 2021. So this is like pre-vaccine. It's still like pretty gnarly, case of
Mm-hmm.
everything. I was doing all the like right things, and I
Mm-hmm.
still it came through my vents like in my apartment.
Oh.
And that was just the moment where I was like, I need to fucking get out of this apartment. It hadn't been a full year since Jason passed, and right after he passed, it was really nice to be there because it was like
Right.
comforting and it was like
Mm-hmm.
our stuff, and I don't know, it just, I wasn't ready to leave. But
Mm-hmm.
like that was sort of the moment where I was like, okay, Jason was sick here for so long. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
sick here, for
Mm-hmm.
this like tiny period of time.
Yeah.
And I just need to get out of here. And I was house sitting for a friend. I was looking for something in my email and I accidentally found this email exchange between Jason and I. And it was about when we had first moved into our apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was mad because I didn't turn in our applications right away. And so we got like the shittier of the two units. Like when I
Mm.
got the keys to our unit, because we were still long distance when I got this place. So it's like I walked in and I was like, this was not the one I looked at, and it has a
Mm-hmm.
bad view, and it has, and I was really upset.
Yeah.
And so I wrote him an email, and I was just like, I'm just so mad. If I just turned those in right away, like we would have had the better thing. And he was like, listen, it's okay. Like we're not going to be there forever. Fast
Mm-hmm.
forward like 10 years later, like I'm still there.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
it was like such a reminder of like, hey, we never intended on staying in this place. Like it
Right.
was almost like
Right.
permission to
Right.
leave.
You needed that. Probably the last little
Yeah.
bit to like the
Yeah.
the COVID was like this is becoming intolerant to me, but like that
Totally.
last little part of you of like that
Yeah.
loyalty of
That
like
like,
not leaving.
yeah, of just like him reminding me, because I completely accidentally stumbled upon this email. I was not looking for it. And it very much felt like his way of being like, hey, but also like turn in your application right away, you
Right.
know?
Like
And like a couple weeks later, like I had been searching for apartments and this unit popped up and it was like right around the corner from the farmers market, which we would
mhm.
go to every week. It was like our church, and
Mhm.
we always wanted to live in that neighborhood and talked about it, and it's like this beautiful apartment in this like cute little building that had been, my unit had been renovated, pops up, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to go see this. And so I went
Mhm.
right away. I like walked in and I just like felt like I need I need to live here.
Mhm.
Um and so with that little nugget in my head of like turn in your thing right away, Julie, I did.
Mhm.
And it totally felt like it was like,
Arranged for
Jason,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it turns out the guy that used to live in my unit, he lived there for 40 years and he passed away in the unit. And
Mm.
they have to disclose that to you at a certain
Right.
point. Like I turned in my application literally the next morning. The landlord was like, "Cool, like, can I see your bank statements?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is happening like already? Like this
Mm-hmm.
is so fast." And then after a couple exchanges, he was like, "So we do have to let you know, like the former tenant passed away, like natural causes. He was old." And like I had one moment where I was like, "Is this supposed to be my red flag?" And then I
Right.
was like, "No, like I am the perfect person
Yeah.
to move into this space." Like even in
Yeah.
my email when I sent over my application, I said, my husband recently passed away and I'm just looking
Mm-hmm.
for a inspiring new space to live in.
Mm-hmm.
And it totally felt like Jason planting all these
Right.
seeds and like, I don't know,
I
making
love
it
that.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Um, I have a couple last questions for you. Not a
Yeah.
ton. We're getting towards the end. These you might have kind of already covered this, but I'm just gonna ask, like, is there something that, like, looking back now,
hmm
what did you need from other people when it was the hardest? Like, was there something that people could have done more of or do period?
hmm
Or, like, what, if you can think back to when it was the hardest, or
Yeah.
when it gets really hard, because
Yeah.
this can be ongoing, and, like, what did you need from other people?
I think for me, it's like it's overwhelming when the loss first happens, right?
Right.
Like consult with somebody before you send flowers because my house turned into a funeral home. Like
Yeah.
I am so grateful for like all the flowers I received. They were beautiful, but like at a certain point one can only have so many flowers, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but um, you get such like an outpouring of love and support in the first even few months or whatever. And
Right.
then life goes on, like people's lives go back to normal and yours doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, like I've had so many people continue to reach out, but I think, sometimes I'll even fall into this where it's like something happened to somebody and I'm like, oh, I don't want to reach out right away because they're probably like
Inundated. Yep.
overwhelmed. Like just if you ever have the inkling to reach out to anybody, even if it is right away, my advice, and this might not go for everyone, but like reach out because it is overwhelming, but also like you can then choose to like respond to those people in your own time.
Right.
But it is
Right.
nice to see like how many people really care. And then I
Mm-hmm.
would just say like check in, like,
Mm-hmm.
because once the dust settles, that's like the
Yes.
hardest part is
That's what I've
like,
heard.
yeah. And so just like checking in with people, at any point in time, like months,
Mm-hmm.
years, whatever. I've tried to make a better habit of like when somebody just pops in my head for whatever reason, just like
Mm-hmm.
reaching out to them and saying hi
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like it feels like there's a reason why people pop into our brains.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And I think too, there's like people, they sometimes people want to reach out and they might be aware that those people might be get inundated, and then
Mhm.
they don't reach out, and then a lot of people do that. So then you don't
Mhm.
even like. So then
Sure,
like there could be
yeah.
the situation where like
Yeah.
no one's really reaching out, or only a couple people are reaching out,
Yeah.
when there is a lot more people that want to, but they're like
Totally.
kind of like, oh, I don't want to do it
Yeah.
yet because they're probably getting it. Just so I think I agree with you. Like,
Yeah.
especially if you don't expect anything back in return, like even an acknowledgement, even if someone just like, hey, I just want to let you know, you don't have to get back to me. You don't have to even
Yeah.
respond. I just want you to know, like I think that's always like really nice to like
Yeah.
let the person off the hook too, to accept the love without having to like do anything.
Totally. And
Yeah.
like, and then also like, so many people, I would see them for the first time or whatever, and maybe it had been a long time since I'd seen them. And, you could tell people would like want to bring it up, but wouldn't
Hmm.
want to, so I would just encourage people to like, and again, this is so personal to everybody. So like, there's no one size fits all, but like,
Hmm.
I think for me, it's like okay to bring it up and just be like, I just wanted to say I'm so sorry about Jason or whatever
Hmm.
because I like when people remember that he's gone or remember that my
Hmm.
mom's gone. It's like
Right.
it's comforting to me to know that like that he is missed or my mom is
Right.
missed or whatever. And then sometimes it just like it gets that awkwardness that everybody maybe is already feeling or like or even like sometimes I'll be like, well, I don't know if you know, but my mom died and blah blah blah. Like I'll bring it up because I just feel like I need to like I
Yeah.
don't know, bring it
Well, yeah,
up.
because you're like not like when you're kind of still like on any given day, you could be processing stuff, and like
Yeah,
if people don't know and you might not be your full self or what how you think
yeah,
they normally perceive you, it is kind of like you just want to be like, hey, yeah, like so this happened. That's what's new
yeah,
with me. Like,
yeah, totally.
hey,
Like,
hey, what's new with you? What you working on?
yeah,
Oh, well, my dad
totally.
died. Like, so I
Yeah.
was kind of working on that. Like it's doing that stuff. So yeah, there's like I totally understand that. I think there's, and I feel like this is also gonna, this is definitely a theme when I talk to people is like there is this sidestepping of like I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to hurt someone more than
Hmm.
they're already hurting, but then
Right.
not bringing it up sometimes is like not helpful because
Totally.
it's like avoiding elephant
Uh-huh.
in the room, not honoring the person, acting
Yeah.
like you're forgetting them. And that's equally kind of,
It's
and this is what I'm talking about, this weird tiptoeing shit that we do because
totally.
nobody knows how to deal with it. We don't, I feel like as a society, we don't accept our own mortality. We don't accept it
Yeah.
from people around us. Growing up in Minnesota, like
Hmm.
when
Oh
like
yeah.
people talk about stuff, they're very much like, well, heaven forbid this should happen to you. And it's like, well, but it is all
It's
going to
going
happen
to.
to
We're all
everybody.
gonna
And there
die.
is like, don't say that. Oh, you'll never guess who passed away. And it's like, I mean,
Maybe I will. I don't know.
maybe because everybody, like, so
Yeah.
there is like this very, there are other cultures that like, they do better in this area. I
Totally.
think I don't know what they are. Maybe I should do some research on that. But I think like we have a little room for improvement in that.
Absolutely.
And I think this like tiptoeing, like even acknowledging it, talking about it, like everybody being like, yeah, that happens too, and like feeling like grief is airborne. Like people are almost
Yeah.
afraid of it. Like they start
Totally.
avoiding. I notice I do it. I'll be like, I don't want any more. I can't take any more sadness. Like I'm already a
Right.
sad person. Like I can't take it. Or like I don't want to bring it up. Like oh, it's airborne. Like it could be like
Right.
contagious. Like that kind of thing. And so, and that might just be me, but I've noticed that a bit as well. That's the best way I can describe it as like being afraid it's airborne or like I'm gonna catch it. Like
Yeah.
because the anxiety it brings up for people and the sadness and the empathy that they might have is like they can't tolerate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I got one more question for you.
What you got?
What I always say at the end of all the podcasts, I don't give advice. I don't encourage my guests to give advice, but I do ask for their suggestion.
Sure.
So, do you have a suggestion for people who might be suffering right now? Even if you've already said it, what again? Like, what's your suggestion if you have one for people who might be suffering right now?
I mean, honestly, I think like reach out and talk to somebody like that you can trust, you know, because I think the more that we like suffer in isolation, the harder it becomes. And the more that I've shared my experiences, the more I've seen that other people, have similar feelings in similar ways. It's just like it is a relatable thing. Like we do all have grief in our lives and we've all grieved and while it's good to, try to work things out for yourself sometimes, and like self-soothe and figure, like go internal and not mask things with other things. I think at a certain point, like you don't have to suffer alone. You shouldn't have to suffer alone, and it's really important to like to reach out, even if you're not the kind of person that likes to reach out. Like it's just however you can figure, even if it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, do you want to go for a walk? Or, like
Mm-hmm.
you don't even have to talk about the thing you're suffering with, but like try not to lose like the human connection because I think that's the thing that can like really, help us through. And it allows other people to help you. And at the end of the day, like sometimes that's a gift for that other person.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm going to say one thing that I didn't say at the
Yeah.
beginning that I wanted to say is that one of the things about you that has been that has impressed me since the beginning. I mean, obviously, fantastic dancer, like very smart dancer. Like there are great dancers and then there's smart dancers as well, and fun dancers to work with. you are all those categories and boxes. But I still can't quite wrap my head around how you caretook and had a professional dance career. Like, I don't know how you did that. I don't know how you showed up for that. I don't know, because I don't think of people, like a lot of people who listen to this podcast like might be dancers, but if you are not, I don't think anybody realizes how hard it is to have a
Hmm.
career in dance, especially when you've moved from someplace else. You're not a native, Angelino, or a native
Hmm.
New York City person who grew up with that culture and grew up with the industry kind of like right around you. It is such a difficult profession. It is so, you have to have so much energy and focus to put towards it to make it successful. I have no idea how you were caretaking and doing that. Like, I just don't know. Like, physically, I don't know. Emotionally, I don't know. Like, mentally, spiritually, all of the boxes. Like, I don't know how you did it, but you did, and you
Oh,
continue
you're
to, and
very
you
sweet.
still do. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how
Well,
many lifetimes it would take me, like personally.
I mean, I sometimes it felt really petty to like, lay on the couch and cry about a bad audition to Jason, who is, undergoing cancer treatment. But he always gave me the space to have those feelings too. So
Right,
I feel like
right.
I was able to do that because I had somebody, supporting me too.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I'm still trying to do it. I don't know. How do you do it?
I,
How
I,
can we keep doing it?
I don't know. I don't know, girl. I don't know.
Uh,
Julie Schmid, thank you so, so, so,
oh,
so much for
oh,
coming on and talking about the hard stuff and being willing to like really let it all out there. This is like not a walk in the park as far as, an interview, and I so appreciate your grace and your willingness to come on.
oh my God. Thank you for having me. I think the world of you and I love chatting with you anytime, but anything.
Thanks so much.